All right, good. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys are all doing well. We did our sound test, so I think everyone can hear us okay, and I can see everybody. So hopefully the technical details are well in place. We've got a great session for you today. Scott Meyer, who is the city manager at Cape Girardeau, is with us and has some really amazing insights for us. Before turning it over to him, I'd like to just quickly walk through a handful of logistics and background items. My name is Rishu Mahalha. I am the Growth in the Regional Ozarks Grow Program Economic Advisor. Have an incredible opportunity to work now for several years with many of your communities, so it's such an honor to be here with you again. Couple of quick housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded, so you can find all of our recordings on our central portal, and I'll share that with you really quick. 1 second. The name of the site is business911.org. So if you go here, you click on Grow Missouri, and you'll be directed to this link. Basically, there's a handful of business resources that are accessible to you. Everything from direct support. There's a catalog of all the goodies that small business, mid-sized businesses, nonprofit leaders can access if you're looking for mentoring help for your business, looking for interns. You can find some direct help at this site. Also, all of our monthly speaker events are recorded and archived under this umbrella of Business Educational Speaker Series. And you can see each month's events posted here. And if you scroll down a little further, you can see the recordings from our past events. So if you ever want to revisit today's discussion or look and see what other conversations took place, we certainly welcome you to come to this site. It's built for you and sort of by your various chamber partners. And so that sort of brings us to the big, really shout out to all of our chamber partners. We have Casey in Marshfield. We have Shannon in Aurora. We have Tabitha in Salem and Tanya in Buffalo. And it's really because of your leadership that this event is possible. Thank you, each of our chamber leaders and our communities, for helping support this incredible opportunity to invite speakers from the region and beyond, and make individuals like Scott Myers accessible to our communities. The other item I wanted to quickly highlight was, as some of you may be aware, we've launched this really interesting program called Create Here. You can find more details for this program at createhere.biz. And I'm just sharing with you what the site looks like. Basically, it's an opportunity for us to attract consumer-style businesses to our communities. Each of our communities sort of telling a story about who they are, what they are. So if I pick, for example, our first one here, Aurora, I can click on what exactly Aurora has to offer. In this case, we tell a little bit about the story of who Aurora is, their background, and more importantly, from a business perspective, we offer specific incentives, identify specific properties that we are hoping businesses move into. So applications are open right now. We will be accepting applications through end of June. So if any of you are thinking of expanding your business, know of people that may be looking to expand their businesses in our communities, this is a great place for you to go. Our communities want you to expand your businesses to our communities, and they really are offering lots of great incentives, in over $10,000 worth of incentives being offered. So please look for that. Excuse me, I'm having a little bit of that. Okay, sorry. All right. So with that, a couple of last housekeeping notes, which is all of you should have a survey form in front of you. Please take a moment to give us feedback on how we did. We're always looking for feedback on what we can do to improve the quality of your experience. So please take a moment to fill that out. And as you're listening to our speaker today, the other request is Scott has some really incredible insights. Scott's going to speak for about 30-40 minutes and then opening it up for questions and answers. Hopefully you'll be able to engage with him in a handful of questions. So as you think of any questions, please do make a note of that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Scott. Scott, if I'm not mistaken, you are a graduate of Aurora. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
A long time ago.
Clap again. Yay!
Yeah. So glad to see our alumni doing wonderful things in the region. I was reading Scott's bio. It's amazing how much great community and public work Scott has done. He's an engineer. He holds a bachelor's degree and an engineering degree from Missouri S&T. And has really sort of committed his life over 30 years to public service in a variety of engineering departments at MSU and other communities, and just has an incredibly vast array of experiences on what it takes to run an effective, productive government. And today's topic is very, very pertinent to all of our grow communities. The topic is really around how we build a leadership pipeline that can feed into sort of the future leaders of a community. This is a big topic for us. Scott, thank you for talking to us about this. This is something that we talk about just about every week, every month in our communities. So very much excited that you'll be able to share your insights. And so without further ado, Scott Myers.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you very much to everyone that's here today. I hope I can add something to the discussion, and very much look forward to your questions as well at the end. Sometimes I learn the most from those. So as has already been said, I'm a native of Southwest Missouri, of Aurora High School. I played in the band and basketball there. Had an incredible math physics teacher, Eugene Oftenbrink, who really put that spark of question about about science and math, which then led me to Missouri S&T. It was called University of Missouri at Rolla at that time, or just Rolla. And subsequently, I did get my civil engineering degree. I'm a red licensed professional engineer, and I was on that path for about 22 years working for MoDOT, building roads and all transportation networks. But about 15 years ago, I had an opportunity to go to Southeast Missouri State University, became their facilities management director, built a new river campus there, and then 10 years ago I went to work for the city as city manager. So it has been, I don't know whether it's I can't find the right thing or if I just like doing different things. I hope I like doing different things and different challenges, but they've all been revolved around public service. I remember back when I was at Rolla, my first one of the first year I was there, I saw a poster that said civil engineering is a people-serving profession, and that sparked in me the second part of that science engineering part. Then was, how do you apply that to serving people? And that really spoke to me, and has really led to 30 whatever years in public service. I've been there 10 years at the city of Cape. We've had a lot of great growth in the city of Cape, and a lot of people feel like have been really a lot of momentum building. We've have seen huge transformations in our parks, in our downtown businesses, in actually the climate of business, the climate of expanding business, and really the whole entrepreneurial sector has blossomed really in the last few years at Cape. We have a blossoming business called Codify that takes really a lot of technical businesses and gives them a place to be. And then the university has a place called Catapult. And so those are things that have happened, and we've been very happy about that direction. And we had a mayor for 8 consecutive years. Our mayors are term limited. All of our council members are term limited to 2 consecutive terms. So about a year ago, our mayor, we have a new mayor, Bob Fox, came on board and really began to sit down and talk about, what are some of the threats to the momentum that we have, and what are some of the things that he was concerned about. And one of the things that he was very concerned about really is the issue that was brought up earlier about having that bench of leaders of the next generation that will come forward. Term limits somewhat limits or makes even more necessary that need. People serve 2 terms and then they are done. And so in the election where our mayor was elected, he ran unopposed, and 2 of the council members ran unopposed. And so we only had 1 race that was contested, and it had 2 candidates in it. At the same time, our school board was being elected. All of them ran unopposed. And fortunately, we had really good people running for all of those offices. So you might look at it and say, there's really no problem there. But our mayor really has latched onto that problem and said, no, there is a problem, because all it would take is a small group of people who really wanted to change the course of the city, and not that change isn't good, but who could come in and really quickly affect perhaps a not so positive change in our city's future. So he began to ask questions about city government. During that time, we were already in the process of developing a tool that we call our placemat. I think we can potentially share that here. And it's really a tool that says what happens in a city in a week. So it is it's spatially, you've probably seen a tool like that. It spatially represents the budget of each of our departments. And then within that space of the placemat or the sheet of paper, it says what happens during 1 week of that within that department. So if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see where weekly our call for help line gets 100 calls for help, and so we respond to them and then try to do prevention and preparation, those types of activities. That happens in our fire. Right below that is the police and what they do. And again, you can kind of see the relative size of their budget. On the far right is the largest department that we have, is Public Works. It contains water, wastewater, and trash, streets, manages our fleet, and it talks about what happens within a week there. We treat 38 million gallons of water. We treat 42 million gallons of wastewater each week, pick up 9,000 households of both trash and recycling. All of that happens within a week. If you look at our budget averages about $75 million. So within that 1 week, about $1.4 million on average goes out to do all of these functions. And so this began to show people just the complexity of what we do and how we are touching their lives every single day. And I always say that our business in public service is to touch people and to touch their lives, but really to not invade their lives. And so we don't. So much of what we do is invisible or undetectable, and we like it that way. And a lot of people that get into public service get into it because they can be invisible, and but that also works against us because people just believe this stuff happens, and if it's invisible and it's not detectable, then the idea is that it's happening almost free, and it's certainly not. It's supported by their tax dollars, and so we begin to try to want to make that connection. And so that connection, this was kind of that first, the first blush at this, and we've shared this now quite a bit around the city, and people begin to relate to that, and just the spatial relation of it and all the things that happen. They're overwhelmed by all that takes place within the city each and every week. But our mayor wanted to go deeper. And so we had also had discussions previously about a Citizens Academy. Actually, our police do on a Saturday, they do what they call the police experience, where they have citizens come in, they sign up, they sign a bunch of waivers, and then we put them through an experience where they're faced with going through a building, and people come out at them and they decide whether to shoot or not, and so they go through a day of police experience. Our fire does the same thing. They have a fire experience that they go through. But again, that really was interesting and neat, and people who were prone to wanting to be a part of those services were signing up for those. But what we were looking for was some people that would get involved and be holistic. So our mayor wanted us to go down this road of the academy, and so we developed an academy about a year ago. We had our last fall. We had our first academy experience. About 17 citizens signed up for it, and then the spring we had the second session. And we took the evaluations and the feedback we got from the first section. We feel like we improved the second section. The second session, I think we had 18 in this second session. And in front of you, you'll see the overall overview of the academy. So it is pretty robust. It's 10 sessions. We commit to 2 hours for each session. We try to get them out actually in an hour and a half, but we ask for 2 hours, and at 8 o'clock we are done. If people want to leave, everything is completed at that time. We feel like asking them for 2 hours, total of 20 hours, is a lot, and we do ask them to try to attend every single session. And our bond to them is that we'll give them an experience that will help them learn more about what we do, and we'll learn more about how they feel about it. So you can see in this overview, we started out with orientation and budget. We tell them a little bit about our city. I'll go through that part of it, and then we spend the rest of that, the balance of that evening talking about budgeting and about how do you do a $75 million budget, and how do you make decisions, and the fact that if you want to increase one thing, then you end up decreasing something else. And we actually have a little budget game that we play with them, where it's a game board, and each table rolls the dice and is faced with budgetary decisions to make. And then as they go through that, they are supposed to try to save $500,000 out of the budget, because oftentimes we're faced with those types of decisions because of things that come up, or revenues that aren't quite as high as we thought they might be. And so it's a real life experience that they are put through this game that we play with them. So that's how that one goes. The next one is we feel important on development and neighborhoods. That's important because economic development, as you business leaders know and chambers know, it's the driver of everything. You've got to be growing your economy or you're losing. From a city standpoint, you're losing revenue, and there's always things that churn off. You have a new restaurant. Well, you probably had a restaurant that closed too. So you've got to constantly be feeding your economy, or you're just going to get further behind. So we talk a little bit about that and how we try to reach out to existing businesses to grow, how the entrepreneurship is really taken a lead in development of jobs, and really that magical business that's going to come in and save our economy doesn't exist. But although we do, work in that, but we've really come to have a lot more focus on growing existing businesses and converting folks into entrepreneurship, and that's really been our focus in that area. We then have the chamber come and do one of our sessions on the economy, jobs, and tourism, and we have some co-relationships with our chamber in what we call Magnet, which is trying to attract jobs, and then our CVB, our Commission and Visitors Bureau, is run by our chamber as well under an agreement that we have with them. So they come and go through that. We spend time at the airport. One of our sessions, that was a session that really wasn't a session, we just had talked about it, but from our first session, they really wanted to learn more about our airport, why that's important, and why we spend money on it. And so we devoted an entire session to it this time. It seemed to work out very well. Public Works, of course, has their an entire session. Plus, then they do streets and wastewater tour the next week. So it is pretty comprehensive. Again, if you look at the budget, it's a large part of our budget. Police and fire each have their own session. Public Works, and then we end up with a mock city council meeting and our graduation. So that's what we've come down to. Of course, every city would fit differently, and depending on how you're growing and what you're doing, what your emphasis are, you may want to change those. But that's overall how that goes. And so I thought I would just talk a little bit about the introduction that we have. We'll go back on this slide and show you, and I get to tell you a little bit about Cape Girardeau. So if you can, there we go. We'll start right there. So Cape is about 39,000 people, and as far as our population is, but we are a regional hub, and so like Springfield or Joplin, we attract and grow up to about 100,000 people daily. With our university, we have 2 hospitals, we have a huge shopping hub, and then entertainment hub has become a big part of what we are, as well as sports has become a big part of what we are, with our Parks and Rec, as well as our Cape Catfish, and then our Division I teams. A lot of people come in for sports. Our median income's $42,000. Some of our recent awards we've had other than these, but our most recent ones were we were the prettiest city in Missouri by Architectural Digest, and we're the 36th best small city to start a business by Wallet Hub. So those are things, and we've had others, but those are the most recent things that we try to celebrate and focus on for our city. The next slide, I think, was an overview of the academy, which I've already covered, but then talk a little bit to them about how local government is unique. So government, we're a service provider. We provide water, sewer, and trash, as I said earlier, but we're also regulatory. We have building codes. We have business licenses, liquor licenses. Apparently, we're going to be setting zoning for marijuana facilities, and so those are things that we have. We have to have the citizens' best interest in mind at all times. And I always tell people, local government, we don't have the luxury of a non-balanced budget. Our charter requires that we have a balanced budget every single year. We can't spend money we don't have. We cannot print money, and we are the last place on serving people. If the state doesn't do it, if the federal government doesn't do it, if the state government doesn't do it, we are required to do it. So we take care of the everyday needs every day, and that's kind of back to that sheet I was talking about at first. We are really interacting and touching people every day. Read a quote a long time ago. So I think it's John Galsworthy said that idealism increases in direct proportion you are from the problem. And local government is the closest to the problem, so we really cannot afford to be idealistic. We've got to get the trash picked up and the potholes fixed, the water clean, and everything taken care of. So and do it all with a balanced budget. So that's our charge. The city of Cape is a government that is a charter city. So that means we kind of have our own constitution, is the charter. And our charter calls for a city council to be elected. We're elected in 6 different wards. And then we have a mayor that's elected at large. They hire the city manager, and then the city manager does all the rest of the hiring and brings about the government in the city of Cape. We have our city has developed values that we do our business by. Actually, we're in the process of looking at those, and we do have that city manager form of government. We usually go over our mission and then our goals. Our city councils have really established 5 major goals in our in our city. So those goals are to enhance our regional position in economic development. We improve safety and health of employees and community. We keep our fiscal discipline visible. Our fiscal discipline visible. One of the things we found out as we surveyed our citizens was they didn't know that we were extremely working on fiscal discipline and sustainability of our fiscal plans because we weren't telling them about it. So we're doing more of that. We're really into improving our neighborhoods and self-government of the neighborhoods. So much of government at the local level is about self-governing. We're not about telling people what to do. We're really about putting things in place so that they can take care of their own problems. We're kind of that last resort. We're that safety net. I always tell people if your neighbor isn't mowing their yard, maybe you need to go over and visit them and see why. Maybe somebody's in the hospital or something, and you need to get out your mower and go mow it with them. If you can't get them to do it, and you can't, then maybe then you call the city and we can give them a citation on the height of their weeds. But we really want neighborhoods to thrive within themselves. That's kind of the way that we always did it in Aurora. When my dad saw somebody's yard wasn't getting mowed, he sent his son over to mow their yard. And so we think that's a pretty good model. And then it's really important that we streamline citizen and business interaction. When I came 10 years ago, our ability to process things electronically, we didn't have any ability. People were still writing us checks. They were still coming in to do business with us, and some still do. But we've now made it available for people to deal with us online, to pay bills online, to renew licenses online, and all of those things. So streamlining that has been a real important thing. Our developers can now submit their plans electronically. We do all of that work in that way, which makes it much more streamlined. They get their answers back much quicker, and it also then at the same time goes to their design professionals and allows things to move along. So that's kind of who we are as Cape Girardeau. Tell you a little bit more about our Citizens Academy. I mentioned the budget game that we do. That's something that's been developed, and we'd be willing to share with anybody if you would like. Our budget also is 100% online. So we not only place our budget online and our audit online every single year, we also now have developed or used a product called Socrata, which allows people to look at our budget and our history of our budget in each of the departments and each of the sub-departments, and look at it in graphical form and see how things have grown, see how income has grown, and how and why we made decisions that way. So we've tried to be extremely transparent with all of that, and while we were at first very transparent, we found out that our 800-page budget really wasn't such that people would interact with it or look at it, because it was very difficult to do. But by putting it in graphical form using Socrata, we've been able to make that work. I'll spend a few more minutes talking about kind of what the feedback we've gotten from the 2 sessions that we've had. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the things, outcomes that are coming from that beyond just the original goals. And then we'll have a few minutes for questions as well. 4 or 5 pieces of feedback that we've gotten. First thing we hear from people after they've been through the academy is they didn't have any idea of the scope and complexity of what the city does. So they might have had an interaction where they went and signed up for a park activity, their children were part of a league or something, but just within even that part of parks, they didn't realize what it takes to maintain the parks, to get the parks ready, to have the weekend events, that were literally a 7-day-a-week operation in parks, and what effort that takes to make that happen. And that's just one small piece. So when you take them around to each department and get in that level of depth, they just really have no idea of that. We even have that with council members that come on board, and we take them through a similar process. They just don't realize, what it takes to do everything that does happen. The second thing is the professionalism. They, just don't realize that we have absolute professionals in their field that run the departments, that do the everyday work of the departments. We're fortunate here that we get a lot of folks that come out of the university, from the police academy of the university, and work for police. They come out of our university and then sign up for our fire academy, and then Parks and Rec. A lot of graduates that come out of SEMO who have recreational degrees. So each of those really amaze folks that how professional folks are, and then how we manage it, that we have ratings of our streets, or we rate them every other year, and make sure that we then have an algorithm that runs that shows how those streets, because of their age and their maintenance level, how they're going to deteriorate. And as we forecast that in the future, how much investment we need to make into streets. Just things like that are real eye-opening for people. So it's they don't have any idea of the scope, and then they don't have any idea of the professionalism, but then that's really important. Yesterday, I was actually talking to a recent graduate who happens to work for our paper, and he was telling me that that the thing that he took away from it was that how great the people are. That it's not just a bureaucracy he's dealing with, that he's dealing with his friends and his neighbors and people that really and truly care about what they're doing, that they want to make Cape Girardeau better, and they want to make the lives of Cape Girardians, if you will, better. And that's a side that probably we didn't predict, but something that I think is really true and really personalizes a bureaucracy. And I think that's really applicable not only in government. I think it's probably a little more necessary in government, because people can tend to gloss us over as a bureaucracy. But even in businesses, people tend to think of Sears employees as being Sears. They don't think of them as their friends, their neighbors, people that care about them and want what's best for them. And so that's been a real big takeaway, I think, from the people standpoint, and something I think we want to build on even more, and maybe give a little more time of our people to tell a little bit more about themselves. Typically, we get them in front of people until they tell their credentials. It seems like a wise thing to do, but if we want to personalize it, we're going to need to probably tell a little bit more about them as people. What do they do in their spare time? What are their hobbies? What got them interested in serving people to begin with, and being in government to begin with. So that is something I think we need to really build on and make a difference with. The next takeaway is just really how many people are willing to participate, given the amount of and depth of what we were doing. So like I said, it's 2 hours a night for 10 nights, 20 hours. We thought, well, maybe we would have a hard time attracting people. We so far have not had a hard time filling up these classes. So that's been something that we've learned. We didn't anticipate that we would have that level of interest. Probably the last thing we've learned, that we were hoping for, but we didn't really know how successful it might be, is that we actually are turning a good portion of the folks into advocates, to being advocates for the city, and influencing other people. So we're finding, as people, as things happen about the city, that we're seeing in different venues, our academy graduates stepping up and explaining what they've learned at the academy as an answer to somebody else's question. And for government especially, I think that's extremely important, because it's one thing to speak for yourself. I mean, the city manager can say, oh, yes, we have a great budgeting process and we really, we do this. But they expect the city manager to say that. But they don't expect the citizen to stand up and say, oh, you ought to look at their budgeting process. They really do want your input, and they really do struggle over how to spend their money, because they do want to do what's best for our city. That says volumes, and who says it makes a lot of difference. And then the fact that they can say, I was I went to the academy for 20 hours, and so I speak with some knowledge. It's not just because I know somebody. I speak from some real knowledge. So those are the takeaways that I've had regarding that. One of the outcomes that we're seeing also is, and as we've selected the candidates as they put in for it, we've also tried to have a good spread between throughout the geography of our city, as well as our minorities and females, and then also people's backgrounds. So we try to get a good mixture of that in each of our classes. And then we're hoping that will translate to, as we make appointments to the advisory boards, that also translates into that. So we're working hard to make sure that is happening, and we are seeing that happen actually in some of the recent appointments. And now, as we do appointments, we actually put it on the information. We put it on whether somebody is a graduate of the academy or not. And it seems like that the council members are giving preference to those that are in many of our appointments. So we've been over the top about that, and really do feel like we're filling up our bench. So it looks like I've talked for little over 30 minutes. I've got a couple other things I can say if we have time, but I think maybe it'd be a good time to stop and ask if you have any questions.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. That's tremendously insightful. And again, I can't emphasize that the conversation you're sharing with us is so relevant to the discussions and the challenges that we're seeing in some of our grow communities as well. So I'm sure there are some questions for our chamber leaders and each of our towns. Please start to think about a handful of questions you may have. I'll throw one or two out just to get us started. Scott, talk a little bit about the role of businesses and business leaders. What are some healthy relationships that you see in Cape Girardeau, and what can be done to help create those relationships between the city and businesses?
Great question. First of all, I work for our chamber very closely. I'm an ex officio member of the executive board of the chamber, and each month when we meet, I do have a time to update them on what's going on in the city, and I think that's important. But beyond that, we have a developers roundtable where we talk to our regular developers in town. We get them together. We ask them what can happen to improve the processes that we have. Obviously, the bureaucracy of planning and zoning and things having to go through planning and zoning and the building codes and the building code exceptions, all that slow down development. And once a person makes a decision to invest, they want to turn that into an investment of profit as soon as they can, and we want it to happen so we can see the tax benefits of that. So we've really tried to focus on that. We've had in the last year 4 or 5 different changes that we've made to our development code and to the to make more administrative decisions to allow that to be streamlined. We still have some more actually on tap. Minimum parking, lighting are some 2 that we have that we're really looking at to see if we can change that to give more flexibility in that as people are getting things delivered more. We're seeing more local deliveries. Parking is not as big of a deal as it once, and so why force folks to spend money on parking or on as much parking? So that's some of the things we're looking at. I like to think that we're very open to businesses and their ideas. But then probably one of the hallmarks that we've had in the last 10 years is really looking at each investment of taxpayer dollar and looking to see if there's a way to partnership that. So we were, one example is we needed to build a new a transfer station at our solid waste. And so we were looking at making that investment. We ended up sending out a request for proposal, and there was a waste hauling firm that was also looking at building a transfer station. Well, as it turns out, we were able to do a contract with them. We were able to corporately build one facility and end up saving the taxpayers money and interest, and then actually, I'm sure, save the private entity money. So those are opportunities we've had. We've had the same thing when we built our indoor sports complex. We had a private investor came on board, gave us the land. Things like that are really ways of looking for a win-win with the private-public partnerships.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Okay, let's go around the room a bit. Let's go to your hometown, Aurora. Team in Aurora, any thoughts or questions? Shannon, anything there? I can't hear or see you. Is that no? JP, can you shake your head? Oh, there is something. Okay, hold on. All right. Is there a question there, or is there not a question, JP?
Can you hear us now?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, sorry, technology. I'm not the best at it.
Oh, you're good.
So when you started the academy, the first one that you did you kind of hand pick the people that you wanted to be part of it? Or was it a complete application process?
It was a complete application process. I think we've initially got about 25 or 30 names. And then when you begin to say, here's the nights and here's what it's going to be, then they self, I think about 10 of them said they couldn't make that time frame. And so, no, we took everybody.
Okay. And how did you get the applications into those people's hands? Because that might be a problem for some of the smaller communities.
Yeah, we used mostly social media. We had a newspaper. The newspaper did an article on it, and that was really helpful. And our, it was basically your name, address, what do you do, and when might you be available. We really wanted them to make it as easy as possible. So we didn't have many barriers or really ask much from them.
Did you guys have any other questions?
I wondered about challenges during that Leadership Academy.
One sec. We muted you. 1 sec. Let me unmute you guys. Okay, so challenges, Scott, I think the question is, what were some of the challenges you ran into as you guys were launching the Leadership Academy, Citizenship Academy?
Scheduling was big, a big challenge. Putting together the material the first time was a big challenge, just because you're asking, departments that are extremely busy and to do something extra. So we were engaging them and trying to do that. I would say probably one of the biggest was fear of everybody thinks that their worst, all the people that are mad at the city are going to come. And so there were some folks that were a little nervous about that. But I think it was really mainly just finding the time to do it, and then just the initiative to do it. It's one of those things that I was fortunate because my mayor was very interested in it and very much supportive of it, and really almost made it his initiative. And so, that gave me that freedom to really push it too. But those are the big ones. Is the time to make it's that old 4-quadrant thing. It's something that's important but wasn't urgent, and so you tend to put those things off because you have so many things in a city or in any organization that are urgent and trying to get your attention. This was something that was important, but again, it really wasn't urgent to people because they didn't necessarily see it as a problem. I mean, I have people in the city that said, why would we want more people to run? Because it just makes it messier. But no, most of those things were really small problems that we just had to decide to do it and do it.
What are, Scott, just a follow-up question on that, what in this room you've got a fair number of private businesses, nonprofit, public sector leaders. So as they're thinking about developing potentially a similar program, any lessons learned that you would do different that they can think about if they want to replicate some of your programming?
I'm going to back up just one real bit because I forgot a point. One of the points about doing it was we were also fortunate in that we had a SEMO grad who wanted an internship, and so she took during the summer And so she gathered a lot of information from other cities who have done this, because this isn't a totally unique idea. Joplin has a really good Citizens Academy, and so she did a lot of that work to have that baseline and their information. So then it made it easier for us to replicate something. So I would have missed something if I hadn't told you about that. She was important to that, and really helped us in that finding time to do it. That made a big difference. So you might be able to get an intern or somebody to do that, and because we're here, we have that deal. But what are some of the things, hurdles that we had, things we'd do differently? I think one of the things we'd probably do differently is that we would look more subject-based than department-based. Our first inclination, and you can still see it's still pretty department-based, but we had some subjects like streets that cross multiple departments, and so it was kind of, well, which department's going to do it? Well, we ended up creating an entire night of just streets, and so that was something that we missed the first time, that I think that it's a lesson learned.
Okay, great. Tanya, Buffalo, can you unmute yourself and see if you have any questions? You're still muted in Tanya. Let's go. Well, it looks like Salem's unmuted, so let's go to them. Salem, questions? Tabitha?
I think we have one question.
Yeah.
Yes. I was curious how other cities fund their Chamber of Commerce, anything besides dues.
We
Okay.
Yeah, we do. We are members and have quite a few members, and so that's part of it. Then we have a cooperative agreement on the two programs I talked about. Magnet is an economic development arm that is us, the city of Jackson, and the county and the city of Scott City. We came together and formed a economic development organization that tries to attract businesses and assist businesses. And it was primarily an attraction from the beginning, but we've kind of changed a little bit to try to grow businesses and try to encourage entrepreneurship much more. But originally, that Magnet had its own executive director and staff, and it was funded by each of the cities paying into that. We lost our executive director, and we're looking for a new one. As we were going through that process, we kind of came to the conclusion that us hiring the Chamber of Commerce from Girardeau to do that function really gave us some efficiencies in staffing, like clerical staffing, and then some overlap that really made a whole lot of sense. And so we entered into that agreement with them to do that. And so I don't know, that's not really funding them, but it makes them responsible for a program, but it does bring funds in that they can kind of help them be more efficient. The same thing happened with the Chamber of Commerce the Convention and Visitors Bureau many years ago. It was a city function, and for various reasons at that time, a lot due to the fact of trying to go out and pay different things that made more sense for it to be in the chamber at that time, and they changed that, and we've been happy with that ever since. But we fund that program, and they then hire the director and staff there, and again, you get some efficiencies because of their using staff for multiple things.
Very good. Anything else, Salem?
Nope.
Okay, great. Buffalo, I see you unmuted now. Any questions, Tanya?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We just actually did our first leadership Buffalo. We just graduated our first group last week. Do you have any advice for maybe changes in curriculum the longer you're doing the program? Do you see like how often you might need to do that? What are your thoughts on that?
Curriculum-wise, we view ourselves as probably changing every time, just because it's easier to stay updated than it is to go through and it's mainly, tweaking the information and like I said, changing some of the session makeup to put things next to each other. And then we've added as much hands-on things. So anytime we can add anything that's hands-on, like I said, we have a couple of a couple of games that we play. We have several tours that are hands-on. We try to make everything as interactive and as hands-on as we possibly can do. They seem to enjoy that, and it seems to stick the information so much better when we do it that way. So those are what little suggestions I would have. I might mention too that the chamber here has a leadership CAPE, and it's CAPE region program that in the past we always kind of thought, well, that, and we have a day where government comes in and we talk to that class, but we don't see that as the same thing. We really see leadership CAPE Girardeau run by the chamber as developing leaders for businesses. Yeah, if they could also be leadership in the city, that's fine. But we weren't converting a lot of those people that way. There were a lot of businesses that were sending their folks there to become leaders in their business, and that's great, and we want that. But this is a different purpose and a different niche. And we've had some people that went to Leadership CAPE that have been in the Citizens Academy, and they see the difference. So that's one of the things that we did try to make sure that it was unique, and it is a deeper dive into the city and into government more than what Leadership CAPE Girardeau is with the chamber. I don't know if that helps or not.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, do you guys try to reach out to high school students and college students to get them involved in the academy?
We haven't yet, but we have talked about a youth Citizens Academy, and I think we have had a couple of students that were like grad students, MBAs, or not MBA, Masters in Public Administration, MPA. They've participated, so we have had some college participation, but we haven't targeted them. But I do think that's a good idea, and certainly we have talked about a youth Citizens Academy that would capture that. We do the local government youth and local government day. We see that as potentially being a follow-up to that, to try to get youth more involved. And our police and our police have an Explorer program that they do youth, and that has been really a good thing, as they've needed to try to develop more people getting into that profession. Fire's looking at that, and our public works and parks are also looking at some form of Explorer.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Casey Marshfield, questions?
No questions today, thanks.
Thanks, Casey. Anyone else? Anything else for Scott? Okay, all right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your insights. This again has been tremendously helpful. We got a whole stack of notes here based on what you were saying. And we certainly, if it's okay with you, we'd like to follow up with you and perhaps with some of our town, city leaders, just to think right now as we speak. Marshfield's recently launched a leadership program. Buffalo launched a leadership program earlier this year. And the other communities are thinking. Kim's leading a leadership program in Aurora. So there's sort of there's elements of programming in place, but obviously being able to borrow from some of the pieces that you're working on could, I'm sure, help enhance all of our efforts. So we look forward to following up with you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, chamber leaders, for all your support. And we'll talk to you guys in a month. Take care.
Absolutely. Be glad to work with anybody and send you all of our stuff. You plagiarize at will.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Plagiarize while we were doing it. So.